Well, good morning everybody. I'm hoping today to have a little opportunity to make this video. And I suppose, I hope that there'll be a number of rail enthusiasts around the place that would be interested in old stories now. Some of them are well over 40 years old in a sense, but I just wanted to talk about in, let's say, no particular order in a way, because I never kept diaries, but I'll give you a brief outline of my rail trips in the United States starting in 1974. And then I just try and be brief in some areas of it, but some of the things that I've been able to do are, in today's world, is quite remarkable, because I've travelled on a lot of trains that have been cut out, and a few non-AMTRAK trains as well. So I'll give you a bit of a rundown. Now, I joined the Victorian Railways in Melbourne as a 15-year-old boy. I wasn't a rail fan when I joined, but I soon became one, and I was given a magazine called Railway Transportation by a co-worker, a whole volume of it, one of those bound volumes. I thought, wow. Anyway, I read that, and it's all about, of course, railway in Australia. But then I got a magazine called Trains, and I thought, I'll buy that, Well, it was fantastic, and still going to this day, of course. And I'd open that up, and in there would be, say for example, a Northern Pacific Doodlebug built in 1924. Wonderful machine, beautiful looking, and it stunned me because I thought, whoa, that's almost identical to what we call a DERM, the diesel electric rail motors that were built in 1928 in the St. Louis car shops in that city, of course. And then you would have photos of some of the passenger cars. You have photos of a lot of the locomotives, mostly, let's say, Alco and EMD and all that sort of thing. They'd be the same as what the Australians have got. So I just was so amazed. This was back in 1967, and I did a lot of travel in Australia, but I thought all along, gee, I've got to go to America. And so I won't worry about going into the long-winded explanations or reasonings or whatever as to what happened, but I was able to sell some property that I had in conjunction with my mother, to my mother, so they could build a house, by the way. And in those days, I'm talking 74, $1,000, that was a lot of money. So I decided, upon walking past a travel agent in Melbourne, in Dandenong actually in Melbourne, go by ship, I went in there and asked about it. Oh, what's this, oh well, I'll plan something here. Oh yes, you can go from Melbourne, the ship will go Melbourne, Sydney, Auckland, Suva, Tahiti to Acapulco, Mexico, and we'll get you on another ship from Fort Lauderdale in Florida, which is near Miami, and that'll go to Rotterdam and Southampton. I think it was the other way around, but anyway, Southampton, and it went round to Canary Islands, and then Cape Town, down to Fremantle, which is Perth, and back round to Melbourne. Now, one fare was $300 and something on the forward journey, and about $400 or a bit over on the return segment of this trip. It was a round the world trip. I then went to a very friendly travel agent in Melbourne called Croydon Travel is the name of it. A guy called Phil Asker, and I think he might have, probably passed away by now. He'd be very elderly. Oh, well, a wonderful time. He gave me an AMTRAK timetable. It was only about the second or so timetable, one of the very early timetables that he introduced. Or a bit more than the second. It was, yeah, anyway, it was very early. So, and in those days, you see, they didn't have USA rail passes, incidentally. Now, AMTRAK had been going only a very short few years. And I thought, I want to do a lot of train travel. And would you believe I booked, and I bought tickets. In those days they had, like the American railroads of old, they had a whole series of tickets, let's say. You know, stapled them together, right? And I worked out a trip I went from Mexico City to Nuevo Laredo, just across the Rio Grande from Laredo, Texas. A very fine train ride, and actually it turns out that it was $25 US for a roomette from Mexico City to Nuevo Laredo, about a 2-day trip and a night. I don't think it was 2 nights, I'm not sure, but it was a couple of them, fairly long way. Anyway, very interesting. And then I went across and to Laredo, Texas. Now, I was a couple of days late because on the ship, would you believe, it was the Marconi, was the Italian ship. Of course, Italian crew, and they decided to go on strike a couple of times along the way, and one of them was in Melbourne, amazingly, so I woke up thinking I had a wonderful smooth voyage and hadn't actually left the dock. On another occasion they went on strike in Tahiti. Well, nice place to go on strike, but I was 2 days late, so I adjusted my trip a little bit on a couple of spots and got back on track, to use a pun. But anyway, I went round America. I did 11,000 miles of train travel in 3 weeks. Many of the trips by coach, as it were, on the sitting cars. A number of other trips I did was roomettes and so on by myself. And I did a couple of other non-AMTRAK train trips as well. One of them was the Southern Crescent, very nice trip. And I should lump some of these things together in the early 70s. I did a trip in 74, so another one in 76 with a non-rail fan friend of mine from work. We just enjoyed ourselves and went on a USA rail pass by that time. They had to, did a fair amount of travel over there, and basically that was in 1976. Now I went to, we went to Yakima, Washington. They had the Yakima trolley. Both the cars, they had only 2 cars. One was 1776 and the other car was 1976, which is a nice numbering system because of the years of the bicentennial. It was actually the bicentennial year. Unfortunately, my film at the time was wasted because it didn't wind on. I just literally threw it away because we had to get on the Empire Builder the next day. And actually we went to Chicago from Yakima. I was, of course, upset to lose that, well, a roll of 36 slides it would have been. We went to the depot, went to the car sheds. I guess you'd say it was the barn, if you like to put it that way. And they had steeple cab locomotives from the 1920s. They had, all sorts of equipment. It was fascinating. And I just wondered why they took that train off that particular route. Now somebody might like to comment on that in the comments section, and I may follow up a bit more on that as well, because I've got a map. I've just put on my Flickr an extract, in other words a scan out of the Current Trains magazine showing the various rail routes in that region. We just did the more recent trip was the Empire Builder was 2014, which I'll discuss a little bit later. So anyway, over that time I got to ride quite a number of trains, but I also got to places, and I'm interested in transit, whether you're talking trolleys or trolley buses or cable cars, all forms of transit vehicles, systems. And it went to places, well, like in Laredo they had tracks on the street, in the street. And I knew about these PCC cars that had been operating there, but there was nothing. There was what they call old look GMs, you know, the 1940s, 50s GMs, buses. I was shocked. Got to the depot and found these boarded up PCC cars in behind high fencing, you know, razor wire, let's say. Totally shocked. The system had closed. Anyway, went to places like San Francisco, which was wonderful, had the PCC cars operating, of course, on all the lines that did the whole lot. Fascinating system. And I went to Seattle, which had the old trolley bus network in it at the time. They got rebuilt, closed down and rebuilt years later. And rode trains. Now I've got to discuss some of the trains that have been closed down. They just don't exist anymore. And I rode trains such as the Floridian was, I went from Tampa in Florida up to St. Louis, and went up to eventually into Chicago by train as well. But that train was very nice and had dome cars and so on it, and it was quite good. I rode also, well, with my other friend I was telling you about in 1976, the North Coast Hiawatha from Chicago to Seattle. Very nice train, very nice ride, memorable, you know. And I rode other trains like the National Limited, and went to Dayton, Ohio, which was really, really mind-blowingly nice, if you know what I mean, with the old trolley buses, mostly Marmon trolley buses, and a few what they call new look, look like they're trolley buses. They went blank on the Flyer. They're called, a Canadian built. I even got into the car barn, which in those days, don't forget, everything changed after 9/11. The security and all the rest of it. In those days it was a case of come back later, we'll give you a tour of the shops. Take a couple of photos in there of trolley buses on the hoist, like, you know, and so on. I rode some of the lines there, and I had an overnight stay at the YHA, kind of a wild, cheap place by today, you know. Today's standards, a pretty wild sort of place to stay, but it was okay. And I went to Chicago and rode the old South Shore, Chicago South Shore and South Bend, with an old interurban, and it was the last of the interurbans in the United States at that time. And they'd been modified, they'd been lengthened, I think, and they had the old style windows were taken out, and they had newer style big windows in them, and they were air conditioned and so on. There had been some modifications over the years, but they were basically the 1920s or so interurbans rebuilt. I went down to Gary, Indiana, where I boarded I spent hours in the depot in the station there, because the agent said, "Oh, don't go out. Oh, this is a rough neighborhood, you know." Okay, all right, we'll just wait for the train. So I waited for the South Shore. I should say the Lakeshore Limited. And went to Cleveland, where I rode the Shaker Heights with the PCC cars. They called them trains, correctly too, because they were 3-car trains, and they had little low-level platforms and everything. Like, it was the forerunner of what today would be called light rail. and it was 90% reserved right away. Very nice line, and they had two lines, the Shaker Heights. And so there's that. Now I rode a few other trains. I've got to tell you very briefly on some of these things, but one of them was the TH&B, you know, Toronto, Hamilton and Buffalo, which are two-car Butt RDCs from Buffalo to Toronto. Very nice trip. And another great non-AMTRAK train that I rode, and that was 1977, it was mid-77, was the Georgia Railroad from Atlanta to Augusta. The interesting thing is I rang the Georgia Railroad. I came up on the Southern Crescent and then rang the Georgia Railroad. I said, "Oh, I won't put on a Southern accent." I did, or I could, but I won't. You know, Georgia Railroad here, you know. So I asked him, "All right, well, I'm going to get on this mixed train." "Oh," he said, "well, we're in a dangerous part of town." He says, "You know, we go from Halsey Yard. Get on at Decatur, which is out in the suburbs." And so I said, "What? Well, I'll be on that train." Now I got a taxi, still in the dark. Got a taxi in the early morning. Went out to Decatur, and the station agent did a double take. You know, like, whoa, a passenger. You know, oh, somebody with a suitcase. You know, this was extraordinary. And anyway, the train ran quite a number of hours late because it had been made up, had a whole lot of connecting services. This was the Georgia, so the train came in. It was quite a number of freight cars and so on, but the interesting thing was they had a 10 and 6 sleeping car on the rear, and just immediately behind that was a bicentennial painted caboose. So the conductor got out, put the step box out for me, and put me into the car, and he had a double bedroom. And I sat down. He said, "Well, sorry about that, but a couple of things happened. I ran out of battery power, would you believe? And then a moment later, my friend John Macaroni rang up, and I'm making a bit more now, subject to interruption because my wife could suddenly turn up. Then I'd have to make part 3 and join it together with free mug." Okay, so where were we, as the saying goes? Now I rode that Georgia Railroad mixed. That's right. And I got on, as I say, $5. It was $5.76, I think. So for an 8-hour train ride in a 10 and 6 sleeping car, and you had a double bedroom, and I was the only passenger. Well, we stopped along the way, and the conductor said, "Oh, do you want to get out?" He was out there with a billy can, would you believe, picking blackberries. And these things they were big and sweet. So anyway, what? You know, okay, so I got out, took a couple of photos, photographed the back of the train, and, you know, around. "You sure it's not going to go?" "Oh, I can't go." I said, "It can't go. I think my nephew or something's coming here, by the way. I'm in charge." So, okay, so I did all that, climbed across from the caboose into the passenger car, and I even rode in the cupola for a little while. I didn't get much in the way of photos. I got a few photos, but not too many, you know. Anyway, then I made a big mistake. They picked me up, would you believe, by car at the end of the run, and took me to a motel. The next day I got a Greyhound up to Atlanta. And then I got the Southern Crescent from Atlanta to Washington. Excuse me, I'll be right back later. Well, I am wondering now how many times I can be disturbed trying to make this. My daughter's turned up to grab something and go. My wife is subject to turning up at any time, and I think I'll just have to call it quits after that. Anyway, so I regard that as a big mistake in not hanging around Georgia for a week and doing the other lines. And I've yet to come across anybody else. amongst my rail fan friends have actually travelled on that train. Now, of course, it finished operating in 1983 when CSX took over Georgia and a number of other lines combined. So, of course, I rode around Philadelphia too with the streetcars and the trolley buses and so on, and did quite a number of things, as I say, that you can't do anymore. Just trying to get, you might say, I'll fast forward in a sense to more recent years and give a couple of recommendations too. I did a trip in 1980, by the way, and I rode the White Pass and Yukon at that time, and I rode the train up to Churchill, Manitoba in Canada, and I never rode the Canadian, incidentally, but I also rode the Aurora Anchorage to Fairbanks, and so there are too many things to sort of go, to discuss in that sense, that other than that the White Pass in Yukon from Skagway goes up halfway now. It doesn't go all the way to Whitehorse, but it's very, very tourist oriented, but it's extremely good and worthwhile doing, I understand. So anybody who does cruises to Skagway can go for a ride on the railway up to Thompson, I believe, on the border there. So now we kind of fast forward a bit here to our 2014 trip with a USA Rail Pass for 15 days. And make a couple of notes if you like, because I would recommend certain train trips in particular directions, some of which we didn't do in that particular direction, and I realised later, in other words, that it worked better the other way around. And so I'll give you a few ideas. We went out from LA to Flagstaff, checked into the hotel, and then took the bus up to the Grand Canyon, and then back, and then the following day took the train to Chicago, and then went across to Cleveland and did other. I went up to, by the way, to my nephew's place there, looked after us. We went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, by the way, and then went to go and ride. I said, I want to go and ride this Shaker Heights. Well, we know, oh yeah, well, there's a bridge out or something, and they're running buses right now. Thank you. So that was the end of that idea. Didn't get the Shaker Heights. Anyway, we went to Niagara Falls and went there to cross to by Greyhound across to Detroit and down in Chicago, and we did the we went to Sacramento on the California Zephyr. Actually, that's a really, by the way, that's a really nice trip. I give one of the sneaky, let's say, ideas that I'd like to pass on to people is this: if you're going to do a USA Rail Pass and you fly, it doesn't matter, where you fly into the United States, and this is one of the things you can do. Definitely go from, well, I say San Francisco, it's really a place called Emeryville near Oakland. And there's a story behind that too. You say, well, why Emeryville? Well, I found out from the crew. It's because that's where their motel is. They don't go into Oakland. It's only about a mile away. They go to Emeryville, and that's where they stay overnight. Anyway, you take that out through Sacramento, up over the Sierra Nevadas, overnight through to Salt Lake City and beyond, actually, because it goes fairly early in the morning at Salt Lake now. And then through to Denver, or through the Rockies, and the scenery is fantastic. It's best in America. And then overnight. But the smart thing is to get off at Galesburg in Illinois. And you get a day there, and you get to leave there at night, and you go on the other route to one to LA, and there's one to San Francisco, like, you know, you go to the two different routes, come in there anyway. It's worthwhile doing that, I would think. And we did the Coast Starlight and the Empire Builder to Essex, Montana, and went to the Isaac Walton Inn. Now, it's better, by the way, I'm going to give you, this is a real travel clue. It's better to go the reverse direction on that so that you arrive at night time coming from Chicago, or you arrive in Essex at night and you have 24 hours, then you leave the next night and you go towards Portland or Seattle. Now, the red buses don't stop and pick up at the Isaac Walton Inn anymore. I was totally shocked, but another rail fan and his daughter were there and had a hire car, and we went and rode the Glacier National Park red buses, which are famous. So you have to stop at East Glacier or West Glacier, I think, and get the buses from there. Anyway, it's something you've got to research first before you do it. It's worthwhile doing. Now, the other travel hint I would give is coming, if you want to do the Grand Canyon, come from the east. Get into Flagstaff at night time, get into your hotel. The next morning the bus leaves around 7 or 7:30 in the morning, goes up to the Grand Canyon. Then there is the Grand Canyon Railway, the train. You can go down to Williams. And then it's it's literally a 10-minute bus ride or a taxi ride to Williams Junction, where you would board the California Zephyr at night time and go overnight into Los Angeles. So if anyone is traveling around America, that is the way to do that. That is the direction to do those particular trips. So I also got to say in passing here that I did a couple of trips on the Rio Grande Zephyr. In 1976, I went with this a friend of mine, as I said, and we got on the Zephyr, and unfortunately it stopped halfway and there was a rock slide, and we were taken by bus to Salt Lake City. And I said at the time, it was almost a throwaway line, "Oh, I'll be back next year to ride this train." They just laughed. I mean, the conductor on the train was laughing, and then my friend was laughing. "Oh yeah, right, you know. You come all the way back here in 1977 to ride it." Well, I did. Guess what I did? And I rode it all the way too. So anyway, as I say, with this USA Rail Pass, you plan in advance. You can only buy it outside. Well, actually, you can buy it inside the United States. This is wrong to say outside. Unlike a Brit Rail Pass or a Eurail Pass, you can buy it domestically. But it's very important to book well in advance. I'm talking several weeks or many even to months in advance. Work out your itinerary and book it. There's another very important clue. By the way, these passes are not unlimited like the Eurail and the Brit Rail in particular. 15 days is 8 segments in 15 days. Now a segment, by the way, means an overnight stay. It doesn't mean just changing trains. So LA to Flagstaff was one segment. It's only just a quick overnight journey. But a single segment could be LA across to New Orleans, the one segment. New Orleans to Chicago, another segment. You get the picture on that. So Chicago across to Portland, Oregon, another segment. But if you went from Chicago to Milwaukee and got off and that's another segment. The next day you're going to get the Empire Builder. You've done a segment. It's gone. So work out all of the best possible. It'll take you at least 3 or 4 goes to work out, a bit of pen and paper, so to speak, where are the best routes and what direction to take the trains, what to do in the 15 days. Now you have to have a couple of breaks. You have to see a couple of things. I'm suggesting, like we did the Grand Canyon, and I'm suggesting the Glacier National Park. All right, now my wife is turning up, so I don't want her to get disturbed. You might say a third time, make a third, segment, let's say, of this. So I'll leave it at that. So I'd like to hear from people, your comments section, and ask questions. And it's my pleasure telling you about these things, and we can continue these ideas and discussions later on via the comments section. So thank you for viewing.